Hey guys, Ben Paynes here, and today we're back once again for another video, and this time we are taking part in the BIKC local heavyweight final at Cardiff. Now the layout for this one is a 15-minute practice, which is the footage you're watching now. We are going to skip over this very quickly, followed by a 15-minute qualifying and then a 15-minute straight race. So what we're going to do is jump straight into the footage and see how we're able to do today. Now before we do that, if you do enjoy this video, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. Now, I have decided for this event and following events to change up the camera angle a little bit to give you guys a little bit of a better view of when I'm racing, and I've also decided to change out the layout of the sort of UI on the screen just to make it a little bit cleaner and less distracting from the racing that is taking part. So let me know down below in the comments if you prefer this compared to how it used to be. Now obviously you can see in the background here we are completing our qualifying lap time. This was in fact the very last lap in our qualifying. We were swapping between fourth and third throughout the whole session, and luckily on the very last lap we were able to come across the line with a 35.068, which put us in third place behind Thomas Wiltshire, who started in first, Mike Allen in second, and then Kai Pugh slotted in just behind us in fourth place. So this is going to be a really good race. We're going to jump into the footage. Now unfortunately what you're watching here is, as the race got underway, the transponders on the karts actually failed. So we came into the pit lane here, and after 5 minutes we were all a bit confused as to why the race had stopped, but this was obviously due to us having to then restart the race. You can see we're having a little bit of fun in the pit lane before we get out once again and start the racing properly. So here is the start of the official 15-minute race. You can see we're starting in third place. Nothing much happened in our 5-minute sort of extra practice, I guess you can call it. Myself, Mike Allen and Thomas Wiltshire all broke away in a sort of group of 3, and everyone just stayed in the same positions that they started in. So we've restarted the race. You can see that we're now underway here, and we have lost a little bit of time to Mike and Tom, who have caught us napping a little bit off the start. We make a little bit of a mistake then coming across the start finish line. So lap 1 gets underway, and obviously it's only a 15-minute race, so we want to try and get our head down and make up those positions if we can. Now I realised pretty quickly that my kart felt quite good, and I was really happy and comfortable in this car. I felt like I was able to drive a little bit better compared to how I was in practice and qualifying. The track also began to grip up, which is obviously something that I'm used to coming over to Cardiff. Obviously when I've done my practice sessions, the track's been quite grippy, and also from coming here 2 years ago where we won the local final, and that was the first win we ever got in a go-kart, that this is the sort of conditions we were used to. So we're on to the second lap now, obviously coming across the line quite slow, a 35.835 second lap time, which is obviously a little bit off the pace compared to sort of the best lap times at the track, about 1.5 seconds. So we want to try and get our head down and get on the back of these two, who are now beginning to battle with one another. You can see Mike Allen is really beginning to put the pressure on Thomas Wiltshire, who is up ahead. Now I didn't want these two to break away too quickly. I was then sort of sat in no man's land. You can see I'm checking over my shoulders, but a gap had developed between myself and Kai Pugh, who was in fourth place at the time, and I knew that if I didn't get my head down quick enough, these two were going to break away and have a little battle on their own, and I was just going to sit in third place, which obviously I didn't want to happen. Now here you can see Mike is starting to really put the pressure on Tom, forcing him to defend, which I knew from my position this was only going to allow us time to latch onto the back. Mike is trying to go for some big switchbacks here, and unfortunately for him he just leaves the door wide open going into the second hairpin at the top section of the circuit, and it essentially just gives us a free pass down the inside. Didn't have to work too much for that, just sort of capitalise on the opportunity, and now we moved ourselves up into second behind Thomas Wiltshire. Now I knew pretty quickly if I didn't start putting the pressure on him as well, he was not going to defend, and he was then going to race off into the distance, because during practice Tom has been officially the fastest driver in the heavyweight category, and I knew that if I didn't really put the pressure on him, he was just going to jet off into the distance. Now luckily for me, we do skip forward a few laps, as we were just sort of sat in behind him, but at this point we are now really up on the back of him, forcing him to take some narrow lines, which is obviously exactly what we want, and I'm really putting the pressure on. Coming up the ramp, you can see I'm checking over my shoulder. We did have a bit of a gap to the guys behind that had broken away from Mike Allen and Kai Pugh, who have an own little battle for third place, and now we're really trying to look for an opening here, but Tom is defending very well, holding the inside lines of each of the corners very, very well, and it's just really trying to force me to not really go for a huge dive bomb, but we wanted to try and wait for the opportunity to arise. So this is something that we were then trying to set up for the next couple of laps. I did have in the back of my mind as well that Mike Allen was right up behind me as well, so he was going to be putting the pressure on me. So here you can see I am sticking right behind Tom, almost as in a defensive drive at this point, which is sort of the nature of BIKC. You do get into train driving, and one thing I did notice is that Tom was getting increasingly frustrated throughout the race because we were all so close to him. I think he was expecting to just sort of run away into the distance, and because we were all right up behind him, he was struggling a little bit, and I was hoping to capitalise on this when I could. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, I was hoping to sort of just analyse how he was driving for the next couple of laps, see where he was weakest, and see where he was defending, where he wasn't defending, trying to sort of calculate where we could then go for a move later in the race. Once again, you can see I'm following him up the ramp, staying nice and tight to him and tight through the next couple of corners, just to preserve my own position from Mike, who is looking quite racy behind us as well. And I knew as well, due to Tom defending as hard as he was, everyone was bunched up so tightly together. So again, we come down into the bottom half of the track here. We are 2/3 of the way through the race, only 22 laps in this one, obviously over 15 minutes, so we're just going to see what we can do. Again, we're just trying to take it nice and steady through the bottom section of the track. Unfortunately, we're taking a few bumps from behind, which is throwing us offline a little bit, but we're still keeping our head down, staying concentrated, staying in the zone. And you can see here we've got Tom looking all over his shoulder, trying to sort of escape, but luckily for us, we're getting better drives out of the corner, and I think our car just had a little bit more grip and it was handling a little bit better on this final race of the evening. You can see we're taking another little shunt out of the second hairpin, so deciding to go a little bit semi-defensive coming down the ramp just to ensure we preserve our position once more. And again, we're trying to take as tight and shallow a line as we can, just to ensure that we're cutting down on the track distance to get as quick lap times as we possibly can. Now, our fastest lap of the race so far is a 35.251, which is when we were catching up to Tom, and we haven't been able to even replicate anywhere near this since he is defending so hard. Our last lap, a 35.869, and again we're coming into the top section of the track, almost sitting directly behind Tom, just due to the pressure that Mike was now putting on myself. Now here, as we come down into the bottom hairpin, I realised that this was actually the weakest area that Tom was defending. He was defending very, very sort of similar, if you have watched a few of my other videos, to Jason Ford when we've raced him at Bristol, where he would take the narrow line coming into the hairpin and then he would switch back out to the outside. And this obviously then allows him an opportunity to take the more conventional racing line and then get a better run out of that hairpin. Now, I was thinking about this for the next couple of laps, and I was hoping to try and use this to my advantage. Unfortunately, here through this lap, we have made a few mistakes, and this has caused us to lose a couple of attempts on him up ahead, so we weren't able to capitalise on that on this lap. And again, you can see I'm looking over my shoulder now because we are under pressure still from the drivers behind. Now, coming around into the last couple of laps here, obviously there's only 22 laps in this one and 15 minutes. We get a nice run out of the bottom section of the track, and now we're really trying to put the pressure on Tom. I knew at this point we were getting later and later into the race, so if I wanted to make a move stick, it would have to happen soon. So again, we're just trying to take the more conventional racing lines, trying to back off a little bit, just to ensure that we can get as good a run out of the corners as possible. And again, you can see we're really close to Tom here, and he also does the same thing once again, where he stays to the middle of the track but then moves to the outside to get a better run out of that bottom hairpin. So I knew that if I was close enough, the move was going to be on. Coming through the last couple of corners then on this lap, we are really trying to modulate our accelerator, as the bottom parts of the track were extremely slippy, and we're doing that to perfection through this bottom hairpin before coming up the ramp, really trying to push ourselves forward and follow along behind Tom. He's going defensive once again. We're staying more in a defensive line behind him, more to the middle of the track as well, to get that good run coming out of this second hairpin. And luckily we're able to execute our plan to perfection. As soon as he turns to the right there to sort of drift back out to the racing line, we're able to sort of make a beeline for the inside onto the apex, and we're able to make a successful pass to give us first place in this one. And little to my knowledge, this was in fact just before the very last lap of the race was about to take place. We're able to sort of get our way past and create a half-second gap over the next couple of corners, and then we're able to just sort of jet away into the distance. This was in fact the very last lap of the race, and this was in fact my fastest lap of the race as well. It wasn't the fastest lap out of anyone on track, that went to Mike Allen, but we were still on for some pretty decent pace here. So you could see in clean air without Tom defending in front of us, we were on for some pretty decent pace. Going around the last couple of corners here once again, trying to take as tight lines as possible, really modulating our accelerator as I mentioned through the last couple of corners, and we come across the line to win the race, which I was really happy with. Obviously Thomas Wiltshire finishing in second. We then had Scott Walker sneaking up into third. Mike Allen dropped down to 4th place, Mark Lloyd sat himself up into 5th, and Kai Pugh rounded out the local qualifiers in 6th position as well. However, that does in fact bring us to the end of the video, guys, so I hope you have all enjoyed this one. If you have, can you please leave a like on the video down below, as I really do appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button, as it really does help me out. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.